And welcome to your inference questions. Today we're going to be looking at some questions that require you to look for clues in the text to answer them. So I'm going to share my screen so that you can see exactly how that should be done. Okay, so let's just make that full screen. Fantastic. So today we're doing our inference questions. First thing you need to do is the vocabulary starter. If you have the sheet, then you can print it off. If not, then all you need to do is just match the sentences correctly. So just copy out this whole sentence correctly. For this first one, I can read you the options. Maria withdrew her hand from the cookie jar. Penny snuck a glimpse at herself, trembling with fear. You've got to match these sentences with these options. I took to the stage to sing my Christmas solo. As her grandmother approached the kitchen, as she walked past the shop window. What you need to do is match the sentences with the correct clause. Okay, so pause the video so that you can do that now. Fantastic, and let's go on to the next sentences. Mean Malcolm grazed his hands. The children peered closely at the transparent object. Shirley took a pace forward. Okay, so what you need to do again is match it with the correct clause to see if it created a shadow as the queue for the supermarket shortened after being pushed onto the pavement. And you have the words at the bottom for you, so use these words: peer, pace, glimpse, withdrew, trembling, pavement. Pause the video so that you can do that now. Fantastic, you should have completed that by now, so let's go through the answers. Maria withdrew her hand from the cookie jar as her grandmother approached the kitchen. Penny snuck a glimpse at herself as she walked past the shop window. Trembling with fear, I took to the stage to sing my Christmas solo. Moving on to the next ones. Mean Malcolm grazed his hands after being pushed onto the pavement. The children peered closely at the transparent object to see if it created a shadow. And lastly, Shirley took a pace forward as the queue for the supermarket shortened. Sorry, I don't know why that's capitalized. There we go. Fantastic. Hopefully you got those right at home. If not, you need to keep practicing your vocabulary words so you can get the hang of that. What we're now going to do is we're going to read the text. As I said, you've got to always read with expression. It's really important to make it enjoyable for the readers, and also it helps you understand what's being read when you're reading it with expression and you're changing your voice. What you will need to do is you will need to be following this with your reading fingers. Sometimes I'm going to say join in, and that's for you to join in with me. Sometimes I'm going to read alone, and sometimes you're going to read alone. So make sure you're following it. If you would rather read the whole thing by yourself, then you're more than welcome to do so. This is chapter 2 of the BFG, and this chapter is called Who? It wasn't human, it couldn't be. It was 4 times as tall as the tallest human. It was so tall, its head was higher than the upstairs window of the houses. Read this next bit together. Sophie opened her mouth to scream, but no sound came out. Her throat, like her whole body, was frozen with fright. Join in with me. This was the witching hour all right. The tall black figure was coming her way. It was keeping very close to the houses across the street, hiding in the shadowy places where there was no moonlight. What I want you to do is read this next part by yourself. So from on and on it came, all the way to that's how tall it was. Make sure you're using your reading fingers to follow along and reading with expression. Pause the video until you've read up to that bit here. Great work, let's continue. I'm going to read now. It would stop and peer in. Then it would slide on to the next house and stop again and peer in, and so on all along the street. It was much closer now, and Sophie could see it more clearly. Looking at it carefully, she decided it had to be some kind of person. Obviously, it was not a human, but it was definitely a person. A giant person, perhaps. Reading together. Sophie stared hard across the misty, moonlit street. The giant, if that was what he was wearing a long, black cloak. In one hand, he was holding what looked like a very long, thin trumpet. I'm going to turn to page 5. I'm going to read this section by myself. In the other hand, he held a large suitcase. The giant had stopped now right in front of Mr. and Mrs. Gucci's house. The Gucci's had a green grocer's shop in the middle of the high street, and the family lived above the shop. The 2 Gucci children slept in the upstairs front room. Sophie knew that. And what I would like you to do now is I would like you to read the following section by yourself. So if you could read from here up to here, and then you can play the video once you have read those sections. Fantastic. We're going to read this bit together now. So she saw the giant step back a pace, well done, pace, and put the suitcase down on the pavement. He bent over and opened the suitcase. He took something out of it. It looked like a glass jar, one of those square ones with a screw top. He unscrewed the top of the jar and poured what was into the end of the long trumpet thing. Sophie watched, trembling. She saw the giant straighten up again. I'm going to read this bit by myself. She saw the giant straighten up again, and she saw him poke the trumpet in through the open upstairs window of the room where the Gucci children were sleeping. She saw the giant took a deep breath and woof, woof. He blew through the trumpet. No noise came out, but it was obvious to Sophie that whatever had been in the jar had now been blown through the trumpet and into the Gucci children's bedroom. What could it be? And we're going to get you to read this next bit by yourself. Pause the video until you've done that, and you can play it once you have completed that section. Fantastic. Well done, everybody. Keep going. Let's read this bit together. In the moonlight, Sophie caught a glimpse of an enormous, long, pale, wrinkly face with the most enormous ears. The nose was as sharp as a knife, and above the nose there were two bright, flashing eyes, and the eyes were staring straight at Sophie. There was a fierce and devilish look about them. Now, I'm going to read this next bit by myself. Sophie gave a yelp and pulled back from the window. She flew across the dormitory and jumped into her bed and hid under the blanket. And there she crouched, still as a mouse and tingling all over. Fantastic. So we've read our section for today. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to model exactly how I want you to answer these inference questions, because it's very important that you follow the steps to success to make sure that you're answering those properly. So here I have my inference questions. I'm going to model the first one by myself, and then I am going to get you guys to help me complete the second one. So let's get my text ready. Great. And let's move that a little bit closer. Fantastic. So first thing I'm going to do is read my question. The question says, her throat, like her whole body, was frozen with fright. How was Sophie feeling? And I can find this on page 4. So with our inference questions, okay, there's a different set of steps to success for it, because the answers are not explicitly in the text. I can't just look for those same keywords and find it in the text because they may not be there. But what I'm still going to do is underline the keywords in the question, which is my first step. So it says, how was Sophie feeling? So I know I'm looking for how Sophie is feeling. I'm underlining those keywords because it's still important for me to know what I'm looking for. So though I'm not going to be looking for those same words, at least I know I'm going to be looking for a type of feeling. It then says, read the text and look for clues. Okay, so I'm going to read the text and look for clues. The question is, how was Sophie feeling? So I'm reading. It was 4 times as tall as the tallest human. It was so tall, its head was higher than the upstairs window of the houses. Sophie opened her mouth to scream, but no sounds came out. Her throat, like her whole body, was frozen with fright. I'm going to underline this whole bit because as Sophie, which is who I'm looking for, opened her mouth to scream, but no sounds came out. Her throat was open with her body. Okay, so I've read the clues, and now I've got to pair the clues with my own knowledge. So here are my clues. Sophie opened her mouth to scream. Well, if you're opening your mouth to scream, people usually scream when they're scared or surprised. And I know Sophie isn't surprised because she's been watching the giant. So I'm going to assume that Sophie is feeling scared because people usually scream when they're very scared of something. It says no sounds came out. Her throat, like her whole body, was frozen with fright. Frozen with fright. Does that mean she was frozen in the freezer? I don't think so. Frozen with fright. Usually when you're scared, sometimes your body freezes and you feel like you can't move because you're in so much shock. So now I can pair the clues with my own knowledge. I can answer the question in a full sentence. I know that Sophie was feeling scared and shocked, and evidence is that her body was frozen with fright. So now it says, how was Sophie feeling? I'm going to start my sentence by I'm going to answer my question in a full sentence. I'm going to use the same words in the question. How was Sophie was feeling? Sophie was feeling. So that's how I'm going to start it. Sophie, neat joined up handwriting, was feeling, and remember what we said, Sophie was feeling, how does she feel if she's screaming? Sophie was feeling scared, and I'm going to put and shocked. So we know Sophie was feeling scared and shocked, and I'm just going to explain how I know this. Well, her body was frozen with fright, which usually happens when you feel, oh, and I spelled feel wrong, so what do I do? Do I do it a messy scribble or do I cross it out neatly? Well done, I'm going to cross it out neat. So just one line through, feel fearful. And I'm just going to read it back to myself to make sure that it makes sense. Sophie was feeling scared and shocked. Her body was frozen with fright, which usually happens when you feel fearful. Fantastic. Now we're going to go on to the we question. Why does the giant glance across the street? And it says that I can find this on page 6. Okay, so just to give you a minute to read that. Why does the giant glance across the street? First thing I've got to do is follow the steps, underline the keywords in the question. So I'm looking for the giant glancing across the street. Because the giant, who am I talking about? The giant. What is the giant doing? It's glancing where? Across the street. Now I've got to read the text and look for clues. So I'm going to read the text. I can see giant there, but it doesn't talk about the giant glancing, so I'm going to keep going. Is that workspace? Okay, I'm going to start from here. As the giant withdrew the trumpet from the window and bent down to pick up the suitcase, he happened to turn his head and glance across the street. Okay, so it does talk about the giant glancing across the street. So I've looked for clues. Now I've got to pair the clues with my own knowledge, and it's going to be my own knowledge of the text. So far, we know that the giant is running around at nighttime from house to house, and he's hiding in shadowy places. This tells me that the giant probably doesn't want to be seen if he's doing this at nighttime when it's dark and he's hiding in shadowy places. So for him to glance his head across the street, he's probably trying to do what? Pause the video and have a good think. What is the giant trying to do if he's glancing across the street? Fantastic. I agree. I think the giant is glancing across the street to make sure that there is no one there. Okay, so now I've paired the clues with my own knowledge. I'm going to answer this question in a full sentence. So my question says, why does the giant glance across the street? Who am I talking about? The giant. I'm going to start off with the giant. And what is the giant doing? The giant glance across the street because He wanted to make sure that he wouldn't, contraction apostrophe, be seen. I'm just going to read it back to make sure it makes sense. The giant glanced across the street, and I can put a comma there. The giant glanced across the street because he wanted to make sure that he wouldn't be seen. And I'm happy with those answers. So that's exactly how I want you to answer those inference questions in today's reading, with you writing the questions. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to reshare it again. And we're going to move on to the actual questions now. Okay? So these inference questions require you to read the text and look for clues and pair those clues with your own knowledge to find the answers. Remember, the answers are not going to be explicitly stated in the text, so follow the steps to success. Underline the keywords in the question, read the text and look for clues, pair any clues with your own knowledge, and answer the questions in full sentences. Here we go. Why couldn't the giant be human? Find this on page 4. Why did the giant peer into the house before blowing the trumpet through the window? Pause the video so you can answer those questions. Question 3, it says the Gucci's had a greengrocer's shop in the middle of the high street and the family lived above the shop. Why did the Gucci family live above the shop? You can find the answer to this question on page 5. Question number 4, why did Sophie hold her breath as the giant peered through each window? Pause the video so you can answer those questions. Question number 5, how was Sophie able to catch a glimpse of the giant if it was dark and night? You can find the answer on page 6. And the challenge is to write a short paragraph explaining what Sophie should do next. Pause the video so that you can do that now. Fantastic, by now you have completed all of your inference questions, so let's just go through the answers. Why couldn't the giant be human? The giant couldn't be human as it was 4 times as tall as the tallest human. Why did the giant peer into the houses before blowing the trumpet through the window? The giant peered into the houses to make sure the people were asleep before blowing the trumpet through the window. Question 3, the Gucci's had a greengrocer's shop in the middle of the high street and the family lived above the shop. Why did the Gucci family live above the shop? The Gucci family lived above their shop to make it easier to manage, or you could have put to be closer to their business, or you could have put to watch over their property. Question 4, why did Sophie hold her breath as the giant peered through each window? Sophie held her breath because she was afraid and didn't want the giant to spot her. Question 5, how was Sophie able to catch a glimpse of the giant if it was dark and night? Sophie was able to catch a glimpse of the giant in the moonlight. Okay, so those are all the answers. Make sure that you check the answers first before submitting your work onto Seesaw. And then once you're happy with that and you've gone back and made any edits that you need to, you can submit it and send it in for your teachers to mark. Well done, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.